Welcome to Echoes of Swing. My name is April DeShields, and we are sitting with Carl Sonny Leyland at the Long Branch Saloon in
Yes,
Creston, California, where it is a balmy 110 degrees.
yes, we're going to go with that. That's what you saw on your thermometer.
I believe my car in all things. It tells me when my tire is flat. It tells me when my
Yeah.
oil is low. It even emails me.
Oh, sure. Well, yeah, let's have
Oh,
some
good.
water. Thank
And we're
you,
being
sir.
offered drinks, so this is a marvelous thing. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, Sonny, um, now we've discussed already prior to this over a drink that we've known each other for quite some time. Cannot recall where I first met you.
Well,
I'm
I
terribly
think
sorry.
it would have to be the Monterey Festival because I've
Great, let's
been
go with that.
coming to that forever. I think we came first with House Angels, if you
Okay, so
remember
then
that
that was
group.
me when I hired you. Then okay,
That was you, yeah.
that was me then.
I'd forgotten that you were.
I wasn't legally old enough to be on the board, but I was. Yes,
Well, all right.
but we're not saying anything publicly about that. Yeah, okay, so that has been a while.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
showing our age at all. We're doing
No,
just great.
no, we're in good
No,
shape
no.
for the shape we're in.
That sounds like a Jake Hanna-ism if I ever heard one. So we this you just told me that you're going to be in France pretty soon.
I am. I'm due to go over there about a week from now, and it's kind of a departure. It's a classical music
Really?
festival, which I never thought I'd be on one of those. But
First time for everything?
yes, they wanted to feature Boogie Woogie, and they've hired me and my Spanish colleague Luis Coloma to play piano duets.
How neat. How long are you going to be there?
A week.
Good for you.
Yeah, yeah, and supposedly the opening concert, they said there's something like thousands of people, like
How neat.
more people than I've ever played for.
Don't get
Yeah,
nervous.
yeah, yeah. Like added up in my entire career, there's going to be more than that.
Oh man. Well, at least it's not the option where Wild Bill Davison said in Germany they're staying away in droves. So
Oh
hey,
yeah, it's always nice to hear that. Yeah,
so it's the opposite. You're good.
yeah.
But well, good for you. Well, I wish you safe travels on that.
Thank you.
And if we have any subscribers in the UK, which apparently most of our subscribers are in the UK,
Oh, okay.
there you go. You're gonna
Hmm?
go by your old home.
Not this time. I'd like to, but people ask me, do I go back to the old country? And since my parents have passed away, there's sort of not a lot of reason. I mean, I
Pulling you
could
back, yeah.
certainly go and have fun there, but you know what it's like for musicians. You've got to be
Yeah, you have to worry about the expense.
earning
Yeah,
a crust
yeah,
at the same
yeah.
time.
Can't do anything cheap.
Yeah,
Only if they're paying part of the way at least.
all right.
Well, good for you. Well, speaking of classical, I know a lot of musicians that I know, and forgive me, there's bugs, so I'm not just randomly putting my hands out there. Um, a lot of musicians that seem to end up in this type of music typically many times either start in that type of music or start in classical, but you
Mm,
are a little different. You're the only person I've ever met besides myself that actually started really listening to more like old rock and roll and country, because I
yeah,
think I told you my family's out here from the valley, so there was a lot
right.
of country playing,
Yeah,
a lot. So tell us a little bit about
sure.
how you went into here from there.
Well, sure. Yeah, my dad had some nice records. He wasn't a collector per se, but he had a few LPs that spanned the genres of old time country, traditional jazz. He called it Dixieland. We don't say the D word anymore, but for the accurate
now that
description, that
now that Warren Vichet
yeah,
Senior is dead, we don't
you're
say that. Yeah.
right, right. So yeah, it was sort of some Brit trad, but he actually liked the slightly more modern guys who adapted that music, like Alex Welsh was one of his favorites.
Saunders really liked him too.
Yeah, yeah, he was well respected, but he also had the old rock and roll. He had three Jerry Lee Lewis records and a Bill Haley double LP,
Mm-hmm.
and I went from there into Gene Vincent, Little Richard, and all
Yeah,
that kind of
yeah.
thing. But I continued to like the country and the
Mm-hmm.
jazz too. And then when I was 13, Carl Perkins came over and he took me to see him
How
on a
neat.
bill with Bo Diddley and an English group
How neat.
called Matchbox. So
Yeah.
that was a big thing.
I think Carl Perkins was an influence on several members of the, or a couple of members of the Beatles at least.
Oh, for sure,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, the least. But well, how neat though, because like you, that's what I grew up on listening, and so then I went to more jazz things much
right.
later. And to me, there's a very, and I know that you and I have talked about this before. There is a very close similarity to a lot of swing and country music.
Yeah, yeah,
So
for
it's
sure.
not that even even from boogie woogie back to ragtime. There's
Right.
really
The
there
lines
is
blur.
they do, and especially nowadays where people like you and I and younger people even are listening to so much of it that they're morphing so much of it together. Was it difficult for you at all to make any kind of an adjustment or transfer?
Well, it was difficult in that the, the the blues and rock and roll, for want of a better term, I'll call it three chord music, although
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't quite that restrictive. That always came natural to me. I started with the piano when I was 15, and I could already hear the chord changes in
Mm-hmm.
my
Mm-hmm.
head.
Yeah.
It didn't really take but well, it felt like just a couple of days to
Yeah.
realize what that
Yeah.
was on the piano. But then when I came around to wanting to play jazz, it was challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that didn't come naturally. I had to really work hard and be determined and
Mm-hmm.
push and
A lot of listening.
gradually
Yeah. Yeah.
accumulate it,
Yeah.
the knowledge, that is.
Yeah. Well, even ZZ Top only played the same three chords, so you're not in bad company. But I want to say that we've talked about Lux Lewis.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We've talked an awful lot about. Well, we've had some conversations, not many though, about Willie the Lion, but mostly Lux
Mm,
Lewis.
mm. Well, it was definitely Boogie Woogie that got me into playing the piano. Had a friend at school who played a little bit, and one day I heard him trying to make a Boogie Woogie left hand. And I was like, oh, what's that? I can tell it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the rock and
Mm-hmm.
roll, but it's not
Yeah.
exactly the same thing.
Right.
So I dived into that, and it turned out my dad knew quite a bit about
Oh,
boogie. He'd
nice.
been in World War II and
Yeah.
lived in a part of England where the black GIs were stationed, and he
Yeah.
befriended those
Guys.
folks at a
Yeah.
certain pub. It was a place called the Mackenzie Arms,
In
which of course,
Southampton?
no,
No.
in the north of England. My
Oh, okay.
parents were from the north, so it was in a place called Bamber Bridge,
Uh huh.
which is worth looking up. In World War II, there was an incident that happened there
Uh huh.
to do with racial prejudice
Uh,
and such. It's a good little story, but I don't want to muddy the waters here. You can always uh,
yeah, it's just
find the
sick
facts
how
on the
people turn good
internet.
things into bad so
Yeah,
quickly.
but anyway, my dad loved these guys, and they gave him records. And he said he heard a pianist in that pub playing some kind of blues, and
Mm-hmm.
asked him what it was, and he said, "Well, this is Jimmy Yancey's music."
Oh,
So,
neat. Yeah.
of course, Yancey became one of my
Yeah. Of
favorites, and
course.
and is beloved of anybody I think who gets into piano
Yeah.
blues.
Yeah.
And a lot of the British jazz men that came up before me, they all
Mm-hmm.
revered Yancey.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, who wouldn't if they knew what they were listening to anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Now, was it you that told me, or someone had told me that you'd play with Ruth Brown?
Oh, I did. Yeah, yeah. I think three times, maybe four.
Yeah.
I've been involved for well, basically since the thing started. A thing called Viva Las Vegas,
Oh, okay.
a rockabilly and 1950s festival that
Uh huh.
happens in Las Vegas. That's the
Okay.
thing I go for
Uh huh.
every year that we talked about a
Yeah.
minute
Yeah.
ago. And they, not so much now because very few are still alive, but in the early days, they hired as many of the old 50s acts as
Mm-hmm.
were willing to come and able, and Ruth Brown was one of them.
Huh.
And she had had a stroke at that point, so wasn't really performing at full strength, but she
Uh.
loved doing it, and
Yeah.
everybody loved her, so
Yeah.
that was great. And then the same guy that puts on that festival, his name is Tom Ingram, put on a show in Long Beach with her and another 50s singer called Janice Martin,
Oh, okay.
who
Yeah.
was also
Yeah.
fabulous.
Yeah.
And then I ended up playing with her on the soundtrack of a movie too,
Oh,
just
yeah.
just a couple of tunes.
Yeah. I always liked her because she did a lot of well, maybe not a lot, but several Nellie Letcher tunes,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Fine Brown Frame. I remember
All
that one
right. Yeah.
because her and Nellie had a very humorous touch on that one that
Yes.
made it from being a potentially one-way song to a little more acceptable, but very tongue-in-cheek. But yeah, I always appreciated her talent a lot. Who are some of the other folks that you've really enjoyed that you thought maybe you never would get a chance to play with?
Well, it was kind of a weird thing that, I was 12, 13 years old and I'm listening to people like Billy Lee Riley and Sonny Burgess, the Sun Records,
Mm-hmm.
rockabilly types. And then some years later, wow, I'm on stage with this guy. It is kind of like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
visualize something and it
Yeah.
comes to pass. But yeah, Billy Lee Riley, he was amazing. The first time I played with him in a little club in San
Nice.
Francisco, it was like getting in a time machine
Yeah.
and going
Yeah.
back.
You're kind of going, am I here?
Yeah, back to the 50s. Janice Martin, who I mentioned, she
Mm-hmm.
was a standout for me, a
Yeah.
great vocalist and really fun to be around.
Good.
Some of the blues men, I played with a harmonica player and singer called Jerry McCain,
Ah, yeah.
who I loved, and he was just really fun.
Nice.
So I recorded with him and also played a show at House of Blues in LA, and he
Is that
lived that
still there?
he probably is. Oh
I don't
God, I
remember.
haven't been there for years,
Sun said
but
they're changing it so much, but yeah. Anyway, sorry.
yeah, no worries. But
Squirrel.
he lived up to the fantasy that I'd
Yeah.
created in my
Yeah.
mind.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that
Nice.
was really nice.
That is nice. It's kind of neat when you just kind of suddenly go, wait a minute, who am I sitting with? Yeah. What am I doing? But well, when did you start doing your radio show? Because you
Well,
also do that.
yeah, golly, I think I keep all of them, and I think maybe 2009 was
Okay.
when I took it over from Mark Caparone,
Uh
who's
huh.
playing today,
Right.
the great trumpeter. He's my favorite on the horn, and so I'm always stoked to play with him. But yeah, I
Yeah.
took it over from him on KCBX San Luis Obispo, where I'm still broadcasting. And
Nice.
then after a while, via Clint Baker's wife, Felicia,
Mm-hmm.
I got on to KCSM and did
Yeah.
that for about 10 years.
Yeah. I remember when you got that.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
And then they tightened their belts, and I
Yeah.
kind of popped out of the muffin top and fell away.
We'll leave that part alone. But yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, that's. I worked for KZU for many years, and they went straight talk, so everybody got cut out.
Ah,
Yeah. So
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was. I'll talk a little bit, but let's play some music. Right? Yeah. But now speaking of Hal or
Mm,
Marty,
mm,
um, I think we figured out that when I first met you were playing with Hal Smith, who we've talked to
yeah.
on this show before, which probably explains why I don't remember ever meeting you initially, only because Hal, you, Dan Barrett, and Tom Saunders, it was like instant. Okay, we all get it, and it's like
Mm,
instant friendship kind of thing. Only because I'm weird that way. But that makes perfect sense because if you were with Hal, then we probably were yammering on about J.C. Higginbotham or something
right. Yeah. That would be all right. I would listen to that. Yeah.
for long periods of
Yeah.
time. And knowing you, you probably would have been very polite and just nodding and smiling. But
Well, I was a bit intimidated when I first got into the jazz festivals
were
because
you?
I felt like I'd really just figured out how to play it, and I was playing some blues and boogie woogie, and I
Oh,
don't
you were
know, I
afraid
wasn't.
above the moldy figs.
Yeah, I was a bit, and probably it was completely unfounded. I should have just dived in and
Well, some
said,
of them
"Hey,
can be kind of
whatever."
rude, so I can see that.
Yeah, so I might have been keeping my head down at that
Hit me with my big mouth. I probably would have noticed, so I apologize.
point.
But yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, and I've told you and I've told other folks the whole reason I started doing this show again
Mm,
was because growing up as a little kid in a bunch of musicians lounges, in a bunch of musicians lounges, you get to know people much differently than
yeah.
you do simply meeting them coming on or off the stand or
Yes.
saying hi, I love your music kind of thing. Um, and to me, what's most important is the bigger picture of who folks like you are, which is not just one thing. I don't know if
Right.
that makes any sense at all.
Well, and plus, really, that bigger picture is what should project through the
Mm-hmm.
music. The music is
Right.
a vehicle
Yeah.
to present your personality, and honestly, that's the thing that people really
Mm-hmm.
connect
Mm-hmm.
to. I mean, you can get up there and play exact copies of this and
Yes.
that,
Yes.
and I'm not poo pooing that really, because some people can do that and totally bring it to life, but
Yeah.
I'm not one of
No. Well,
those.
it's not. It's a fine line
Yeah,
because to me it means more when you put your own stamp on it.
yeah,
So to me, um, what I enjoy most about your playing is yes, I can tell some of your influences, but I don't know exactly where you're going.
good. Yeah, and I don't know exactly where I'm
Right, which
going
is fine
either.
because that's where your personality comes in. And to me, the whole point of being able to know people on a personal level is that I can enjoy what they're putting out musically better
Yeah.
because it tells me a little bit more of their personality or I can see their sense of humor. You know
Mm-hmm.
Richard Simon, right?
Yeah.
His quotes, the quote master, you can tell if you understand what he's doing and you know his personality that it's hilarious. It's more hilarious than just hearing the quotes. And again, I don't know if anybody else besides you and I understand what I'm talking about. Frankly, I don't care. But anyway, but that's one of the things that I enjoy very much about what you do is because if you are copying your influences precisely or you were copying recordings precisely, I know where you're going. I
Right.
can appreciate your talent, I can appreciate your artistry, I can appreciate the mechanics,
Right.
but I enjoy it more when I learn from it.
Right.
And to me, that's one of the most important things you can do when playing these types of music, really, is yes, you can show me your influences, but who are you?
Yeah. Right. And the how can I put it? The fact that some people can recreate the feel of the era and do
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
well. That's that's the basic sauce, and then you
Mm-hmm.
add your
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
ingredients to that,
Right. Right.
rather than this is we've analyzed
Yeah.
this with
Yeah.
a microscope and we're
Yeah.
going to do it exactly like that.
Yeah. And I've heard people do exact copies of Louis Armstrong solos,
Yeah,
and okay,
yeah,
I
right. It was more
that
impressive
was
when
that
he
was
did
nice.
it.
Yeah, because he didn't, like you said, he didn't know where he was going
Yeah,
either. But it's I think if anything, the most important thing to really impress upon anyone learning this type of music or trying to branch out into various different elements, such as Western swing or such,
mm,
boogie woogie, if they're solely focused on Louis Armstrong, for example,
right.
is to just be able to understand how to listen and be able to the
Yeah,
interplay of communication between the people on the stage.
yes. There's that.
Yes.
There, yeah, you've got to be able to feel the spaces, know when to
Mm-hmm.
go, know when not to go, know how to react to what your fellow musicians are doing. And then there's, if you're trying to recreate a sound of the past, you've got to look at the whole picture of that
Mm-hmm.
too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to, for instance, something that people laugh at, an Elvis imitator. If you want to be a good Elvis imitator, don't just listen to Elvis.
Yeah.
Listen to the
People
stuff
he
that was
listened to.
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Dean Martin and whatever country
Mhm.
guys he was
Mhm.
hearing in Memphis,
Mhm.
and the blues, of course.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not advocating that people pursue
No,
a.
but one of the people that really told me initially how similar some of these genres are is actually K Star, who, as
Mm,
you and I know, was with Joe Venuti and Eddie Lang.
right. Yeah.
but then she did a bunch of country albums.
Yeah.
And people like Lester Young said she was the best blues singer he'd ever sung and or that he'd ever heard, and he was very close friends with Billie Holiday.
Right. Yeah.
So, there's there one, and I was talking with a gentleman across the street with the leather company earlier. One of the neat things to me about this kind of music and this country's influence, if you will, on the music is that there's so many different things that influence us
Mm-hmm.
and therefore contribute to the genre, but really you have to make it a personal means of expression,
Yes.
or it's not something you're going to stick with.
Right.
And nor is your audience going to stick with you because you're a robot.
Right. And that's what all the greats have done. They're interpreters
Mm-hmm.
of songs and of musical styles.
Right, right. Well, I wanted to probably lastly come up with, and I know I don't, and again, I forgive me, I don't remember if it was you that said you were excited about it, or Hal, or Marty, I don't know, somebody had said, because an album I think people should hear only because I really enjoy duet piano albums a lot, is yours called Telling Your Stories, or
Yes,
Telling Our Stories?
right. I think it's telling our stories
Yeah.
with the Spanish pianist Luis Coloma.
Who you mentioned you're going to be playing with soon.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
He's a star over there in Europe. He's working all the time, and yes, he put the project together and basically set it all up, and
Yeah.
I let him call the shots on most of it. I
Sometimes it's
put my
best.
foot down a couple of times, but yeah, joking aside, he's amazing. And,
Yeah.
and I think we did some fun things.
You did, because I could hear you guys having an awful lot of fun on that. I could hear some moments, but mostly I hear the fun.
Well, it's impossible to avoid those
Yeah.
particular moments.
But that one is on Amazon for anybody
Oh,
that
yeah.
wants to be able to enjoy that, or be able to contact you to potentially get that, right?
Yeah, I don't have any right now, but perhaps I can get Luis to bring me some
Yeah.
next week.
Yeah, that'll be good. Well, anything else that you'd like to bring up, or that is coming up soon on your schedule that you'd like folks to know
Well,
about?
from a pure marketing
Be
point of
shameless.
view,
Be shameless.
I just uploaded a bunch of stuff to my website for download. I know downloads are a thing of the past.
Not necessarily.
So I'm doing a vintage thing. They're called downloads. But a lot of the stuff from self-produced albums that you can't get anywhere else. Most of my stuff is not available on Amazon, Apple Music, those places. So
good.
I uploaded, I think, about 50 tracks. And if you want any of them, they're
Please
a buck a piece.
Please do.
Load up.
What's the website they're loading up
CarlSonnyLeyland.com.
All right, I'll put that on the screen as well and in the comments so that folks can see that. Well, thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate it,
thanks,
especially in this
April.
heat.
It's warmish out here, isn't it?
That's one way of looking at it. Yeah. But thank you very much.
Oh, you're so welcome.
All right.
Thanks for caring.
Oh, absolutely.